What was that pivotal moment that made you realize that this country needs not just another co-working space, but the Riveter?
So I think, the seeds were planted long ago, really, and that I've always been very active in the community around me. I am a union daughter. I was raised by a public school teacher who was a union, and my parents always taught me to kind of lift my head up, look around, and be engaged in the world around me, because that's what we owe one another, just as humans. And as I grew up, I always kept that thread next to me. And then I had a different experience when I became a corporate litigator, for lots of reasons. I don't know if there are any lawyers in here, but I'm sorry. But at the same time, when I became a mother in 2014 with my first daughter, I felt like when I told my colleagues I was pregnant, and I worked in a very male-dominated arena, so when I told my colleagues I was pregnant with my first daughter, they immediately had a different perception of me and perspective of what I could do. And so over a couple of years of being a lawyer and mothering, which I did the entire time I had my first two daughters, I kind of looked around, I looked up and tried to see where there were mothers who were running law firms or running legal departments of companies or running companies, and looked around trying to find examples and mentors and people I could talk to about what I was doing. And what I saw was a lot of men. And men are great in a lot of ways, but they shouldn't hold all the power, maybe just a little. And so I started thinking about, why am I buying into this system that doesn't really buy into me, right? We all know the stats. I could stand up here and rattle them off about there are more Fortune 500 CEOs named John than there are women. And then women are less likely to get promoted than men, but from my perspective, women with kids were 100% less likely to get promoted than women without kids, which is it's a true statistic, and that's crazy. So in thinking about being in a system that didn't really buy into me, I thought, well, maybe I'll start my own business. And I am very type A and don't have an MBA, so I started taking classes on how to write a business plan, thinking I'd start my own legal practice. And those classes were at co-working spaces. And when I went to those co-working spaces, I wanted to see women. I knew that women were starting businesses way faster than men, but there weren't any women in those spaces. And I saw pretty male-dominated communities, and I was been there, done that, don't necessarily want to do it again. And so I started talking to people around the country, women, where are you going to talk to women who are starting businesses? Where is that network for you? Where do you find the community and skills? And the answer really was that there wasn't a place for it. And so then I thought that perhaps what I wanted to exist in the world is what I should build. To Lizelle's point, it's what lit me up. And so that's when I decided to take the jump.
And start, yes. So I want us to identify the elephant in the room. How did you fund the first Riveter? Because, everyone talks about when you're some years in and you're moving all around, but no one ever really gives us the down low on what happened for the very first one. So was it self-funded or
oh, no,
did
it
you
was
get
not
people?
There were no self-funds.
Okay, so if that's the case, how did you convince people to give you their money without having any track record of building this company?
Well, I think on the one hand, you hear a lot of times that you can't raise money in a PowerPoint. You can, I did, right? And I didn't have any experience in the tech world and the startup world. What I did have was a really compelling story, compelling financial metrics, and was able to tell people that I was the right person to build it and tell them why. So I think that is what I did. I wrote an actual business plan. One thing that helped me a ton is that I entered a small business pitch competition. And in entering that competition and clicking submit, I put myself into a funnel where I had to have a business plan, where I had to do the first financial model, which was so fucked up. I mean, who knows? I don't know how to make financial models, I'll admit that. I hire a lot of people to do that now. But I had to do all of those things, and then I had to get up on a stage like this and tell a group of people like this what I was going to build and why in a very short time. And that made me learn how to give a very quick pitch of what I wanted to do and highlight all the good parts. And then the other piece is I decided to look at the fundraising process like a sales process. And so I just made an Excel spreadsheet with words, which I'm better at than with numbers, and listed, I looked at tech publications and I was who are serial angel investors in Seattle where I live? And I wrote them down, and then I went on LinkedIn and found connections, second and third connections to those people, and then had coffee after coffee trying to get an introduction to who I wanted to meet. And I just went at it all day, every day, until it was done. And so it
seems really intimidating.
No, it's just kind of like a block and tackle thing. It would be like if you were going to build a table, right? You would say, okay, here are the supplies I need. Here's the plan to build the table, and then you just do it.
There you go. So now we all know we can get money on very early, like without waiting.
Go get money.
Go get that money. In the last 3 years, I mean, you've grown really, not even 3, 2 years, 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
2.5 years. You've raised over $20 million. That's a pretty penny. You've raised over $20 million to scale and start putting Riveters all over the country. At what point did you realize that this could actually be a venture-scaled company? And was there any fear associated with like taking that leap forward?
So when I came up with the idea for the Riveter, I thought I would build one, just the one that I needed in my backyard. And it's really interesting. I called up a friend of mine who was a startup attorney, and I said to him, I have this idea, should I form an LLC or a C Corp? And he asked me to get a drink, and I thought he was going to tell me I had a terrible idea because I was so self-doubting at that moment, which I think is common of all of us. And we sat down, and he said, why are you building one of these? Why aren't you building 100? And I said, well, I'm 100% not qualified to do that. I don't have an MBA. I've never built any sort of a company. And he encouraged me to go Google a bunch of startup founders, like 18-year-old men in college, people who built baby clothes companies and pivoted to build tech companies, like all of this. And he's like, you don't have to have any qualifications. You can just do it. And he goes, do you think this could be a national company? Do you think people would want Riveters everywhere? And I said, yeah, absolutely. This is a membership network. It's like a union. I want it to be national. And he said, then you can do it. And so I went home and I thought about it and went on the Google for like a half hour, fully convinced myself that I too could have the confidence of a mediocre white man.
That's it.
And then I said to my husband, who I'd like fully convinced I was going to leave lawyering and have this like lifestyle business that was very flexible and be home all the time, which he always thought was bullshit. But then I said to him, I was like, what would you think if I built 100 Riveters instead of one? And he said, you've clearly made up your mind, so just go do it and do it well. And so from that moment, I realized I probably always thought it could have been a venture scale company. I just didn't quite know what venture scale was.
Right.
And so, but from the moment I made the decision to build 100 Riveters, and the moment I made the decision to take investor funds, I had to believe, and I still believe, that it can be $1 billion business. And even when it's hard, even if we don't hit a metric, which sometimes happens, I still have to believe that it can be that, because $20 million is a lot of responsibility. Like, that's how I look at it, right? I've taken on a lot of hope, a lot of fiduciary responsibility to live up to. And so I truly believe the Riveter can be and is something enormous. But also real talk, that said, I cry. Sometimes I sit on the bathroom floor and I'm like, how the fuck can I do this? It's not easy. It's really, and I feel insecure a lot of the time. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So I just have to constantly be learning and then hiring smarter and better people around me, like Simone, like my colleague Laura Rossman's here as well. I mean, I've got amazing people that are building this, and it would not be possible without them.
I mean, that definitely goes into the unstoppable together, right? Because you can't do it all on your own. But before we get into the theme, motherhood is clearly important to you. You have now 4 small girls.
Yeah, I like to overachieve at all things.
All the things.
All
okay?
things.
4 small girls. And at no point in creating and scaling this business have you been childless. Literally, you've been pregnant the whole time, basically.
I'm not pregnant now.
But not yet. And so throughout other interviews, I heard you talking about motherhood is not a setback, it is a superpower. Yes. And as someone with, yes, all of that, because as someone with a small child, and I went through a very difficult time with complications, postpartum depression, all of these things, but allowed me to learn so much about myself, and my child has set me up to just be a wise sage, I feel like at this point. Why did you feel that it was necessary to not only weave motherhood into the business and the brand, but quite literally put it on display?
Yeah, it was a very conscious choice that I made, because when I started talking about the Riveter, part of my story for creating it and the reason I thought it needed to exist in the world was because of how working mothers are treated in this country, right? And so if that's part of the reason why I formed it, I wasn't going to shy away from it. The other part was that because I kept finding myself visibly pregnant while raising money, couldn't really hide it, right? And so I'm a big believer that if people think something about you is a weakness, it's your duty to tell them why it's a strength. And so, once I started taking things. So once I started taking that kind of aspect of it, it's pretty freeing, because I truly do think that being a mother has made me a lot better. It's made me a lot more efficient. It's given me a lot of empathy, because I was a Wall Street litigator. Empathy had been a little bit beaten out of me. Now it's back. It's made me realize that I have a lot of grit, because motherhood demands a hell of a lot of grit. Because you don't get to just not be a mom on Saturday.
Nope.
So
they always wake up so early.
They always do. So I've decided I talk about it in my writing. I talk about it with investors, and you do face a lot of questions about it. But I've just learned to take them head on and speak my truth.
But you also literally show up pumping in meetings.
I do. So I pump everywhere because I'm exclusive.
That's important.
I actually right now have toilet paper in my bra in case I leak milk while I'm on the stage. It's super glamorous. But I pump in meetings because I'm really busy and I just want to get it done and want to keep going. And so everyone can kind of orient around that, because I think making milk is pretty natural. And I also, if you follow me on Instagram, I have put kind of having this last baby, she is my last baby. Having this last baby, I put it on display and talked about what it's been like to have the baby and the juggle and everything that's happening, because I didn't see it when I was thinking about having kids. I saw the media narrative of, can you do it all? You're just gonna do it all, no matter what all looks like to you, you're gonna have to do it all. And so it's not really a question, it's how are you gonna integrate it all? And I think if we can see it, it becomes less scary, less unknown. And so if I have this platform, I'm gonna use it and share what being a working mom is like.
I love it, yes. So our theme this evening is Unstoppable Together. And this theme is applicable to the overall mantra of the Riveter, which is built by women for everyone. Why was this distinction so important to not just be women built for women?
Yeah. So I think there's a ton of magic to spaces that are women only, built by women, just for women. I think they're so important. I've been in spaces like that in my life. I still go to spaces like that. My house is almost a space like that. But my poor husband. But the reason the Riveter is built by women for everyone is that we want to change what work looks like for women in America. And in order to do that, that has to involve all genders, and particularly men. I don't like the fact that men still hold most of the power in this country, but they do. And so in order for us to get to a place where we hold more power, it has to be a conversation with them. It has to say, it's actually not terribly scary to pay me an equal dollar. Actually, not that bad of an idea if you fund maybe 6% of women's business ideas instead of 2%, right? All of these things are doable, but we have to work together to get there. And I also do truly think that 95% of men want the workplace to look different. They want it to be more equitable for women. It's just a question of how do you do it, right? How do you put the strategies in place to make the changes?
Yes, definitely. Yes. What the audience may not know is that you have a pretty extensive political background.
I do. I'm sort of partisan. Sorry. You can guess which side.
But from your education to serving on Barack Obama's National Finance Committee and previously working for President Carter's The Carter Center, has your political background shaped the way that you've built the Riveter?
100%. And I think it's to that end, it helped me raise money, because what I learned in raising money for politicians was how to ask for money. And asking for money can be uncomfortable, but it is the first thing you have to learn how to do to raise money for your startup. And you have to learn to ask for it very directly and then shut up and wait for an answer. And that's a skill. And so it's a skill I learned over years of asking for money for candidates I believed in. The other thing I learned is that when I was asking money for candidates, I believed I wasn't going, begging. I was going and giving someone an opportunity to support someone who could change our lives for the better. And so I think whenever I'm asking for investment in the Riveter, I'm asking someone to invest in an opportunity through which they can make a lot of money and they can change the world. And so my work in politics definitely led me to that piece. But on a broader level, I learned about the value of community and being a part of it and what that means. And I think all of us are searching for that and seeking it, and we need it. That's why everyone's here tonight. Like Women Who Start Up, all of this is incredible. And it's because we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And politics has taught me that in many ways. Politics can be so discouraging, particularly in times like these with the person that's in the White House now, whose name I will not say. But anyway, these are, politics can be discouraging, yet at the same time, it can bring us together, band us together, and ask us to think of our better selves and ask us to care about the people around us who might not have the privilege that we have. And so politics has been a guiding force in all of this.
Yes. It's so necessary for us to band together. Unstoppable together, everybody. What I love about the Riveter that definitely stands out from other co-working spaces that are fully business-centric is the focus in centering advocacy and equity programming. What made you want to include that in the fabric of your business?
Well, I think from a base level, I never wanted to build a co-working business. I wanted to build a community business. I see community as a service, and I think the Riveter is that. We're a national membership network, and we have these different services. One of them is workspace, but then we also have experiences, and within our experiences, we also put under our banner the opportunity to engage in collective action. Again, I think a lot of us are seeking for ways to make change, and sometimes as an individual, it's hard to think we can do it. But if you're in a space like the Riveter, in a community like the Riveter, where different people are doing different things, you might find something you want to engage on. And we do this as a business. I joke, I am a partisan person, but my company is not partisan. We're pro-women, but we are not politically partisan. But we do believe in helping those around us and being a part of our community. So, we've done work where we've opened our doors to people who are working to reunify families at the border. We do a lot on voting rights, and how people can vote, because as you get west, voting rights are better, but when you go east, voting, it's harder to vote in this country. And so we do things around that. We do things around just about the pay gap and all of these things. We also talk a lot about issues around race, because I am a white woman, and I have a certain privilege because of that. But the Riveter needs to be inclusive of everybody for it to do anything at all. And so, but to do that, you can't just say it. So you have to be a place where you can have hard conversations, and you center those conversations into what you're doing, and then you also take your platform and you pass the microphone to other people who don't have the platform.
Earlier at lunch, you were talking about a particular event that you held that was very difficult. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, we invited an author to come to the Riveter in Seattle, an amazing author. She's great, and she wrote a book, and then after the book came out, two women the author was white, and the book came out, and then two African-American women came forth as being misquoted in the book. And they'd both been misquoted, and they'd been pitted against each other. It was just really ugly. And so we canceled the event with the author, who lived in New York, and one of the women who was misquoted in the book lived in Seattle. Her name's Ijeoma Oluo. She's an incredible, incredible author and thought leader, and she has a book that you should all read called So You Want to Talk About Race. So I invited Ijeoma to come speak at the Riveter about the incident, but more broadly about what it speaks to on a meta level. And in 48 hours, we pulled together an event with 200 people, and we sat there for 2 hours and had this incredible conversation. I did not interview Ijeoma because I didn't think it was right from where I stood to do that. So a Riveter member, another woman of color did, and it was a very difficult, very hard conversation where I sat there for 2 hours and thought, I know nothing, right? I know nothing about race, I know nothing about the experience of women of color in this country, and I just need to be quiet and listen. And since then, I really just sat and listened for a long time to many people, and I still have so much to learn. But I think the Riveter is a place where people can shut up and listen to experiences that are really important to hear.
Yes, thank you for that. So you are truly creating a venture that is completely wrapped around inclusion and equity for all women, but really for everyone. How does this collaborative environment for all genders make us unstoppable?
It makes us unstoppable because if we start talking and having the hard conversations and sharing information and then sharing tactics for change, that's how we get there. The things that we need to do to get to pay equity are not rocket science, right? It's block and tackle stuff. but it involves us being open and transparent and doing the thing.
Yes. We are good on time, so I'm gonna thank you so much, Amy, for taking your time and being here. Give her a round of applause, everybody.
Thank you. I have to. We just opened in Denver, so we're in Rhino on Walnut Street. Simone is leading our amazing team here, so please come visit us because we'd love to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.